again we meet on this furtive landline. I've gathered some pertinent information this week. The MIB are buzzing like a beehive and trying to interfere in anything I do. More of their invisible agents, more of their irritating agents bumbling around at my front door like drunk robots from Alpha Centauri. And more black helicopters kidnapping neighbors' children and giving them a thorough anal exam. C'est la vie, your kid's not me. Let us get this pony show on the road. His name? Me! Ha-ha! Mr. H here again with a tale of me. Yes, XJ7, this is one of my exploits, and what a wonderfully unnerving story it is. This time I was called in aid of another agent. Location, Marquette, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula. Date, September 2012. Pay attention, because this is how things go down when you aren't paying attention. I received a call from Agent XJ2, retired, to attempt to help him get to the bottom of a problem he was having with his abode concerning some fire demons and a rascally wraith that kept screaming all night for him to wake up, and then continued screaming all day, telling him to get to bed. It was a curious set of circumstances. When I inquired as to why he hadn't just kicked some ass in the supernatural realm and put these cursed fellows in their place, he merely sighed and related how he had tried everything, but couldn't find a foothold to the spiritual reason they had any right to be in his domicile and worthy to create such an inhuman fuss. You see, XJ7, we are like weed rakers, you and I, dragging ourselves along the bottom of lakes as we traverse this world and do what we must to meet and confront the unusual. We unhinge, we uproot these things as we fulfill our duties. And when these things are uprooted like the weeds they are, the tares, as might be said, they cling to us. So we must always make sure to clean ourselves and scour down all the muck and ugly growths our kind have ripped from existence. Because it shall surely cling to something, and we shan't be it. These supernatural scoundrels would disease you and suck life from limb and liberties until you are just another XJ2 in this realm of the physical. Enough! Onward with the events as they passed. XJ2's perplexing nonsense was enough to get me out of the house. It was boring waiting for something to happen, and I found myself so bored that I contemplated watching television, of all things. So I took off. A friend lent me his Cirrus SR-22T for the journey. Can you believe it? The single prop was like a luxury limo ride. None of that highway hiking garbage, and it even had a parachute for the craft, in case I really bollocksed it up and had to avoid crashing. Nothing did happen. I just sat back on autopilot and stared at that tauntingly bright plastic handle above me, tempting me to pull it and test the parachute. But no, temptation is what we always grapple with, isn't it, XJ7? Anyway, I flew into Marquette, Michigan, and hopped a car out to XJ2's retirement villa. He resides now a day out of the big city and somewhere around the edge of Enchantment Lake. What a name. And shaped like an oven mitt. Not much enchantment when you have a pair of those on, is there, XJ7? No, XJ7. No, the sperm-shaped pond nearby is something entirely different. It is not the sperm of enchantment, no. Well, maybe. Anyway, the house was beautiful. Newer build with several thousand square feet in a kind of neo-Victorian mode. Unusual. Especially for the upper Midwest, I can tell you. And once inside, I found it a typical agent's home, cluttered with the unusual made into decor. All of our pads are like museums of the macabre, sooner or later. You'll see XJ7, you shall see. And naturally, once a stranger shows up, all those ballsy demons and darling devil dogs of doom disappear like debauchees on a Sunday morn. I saw this idiotic behavior a billion times before. No screaming banshees or wailing waifs, or whatever he was on about down the bloater a few hours earlier. It was a pleasant and sun-filled house with an enormous entry area containing a spectacularly tasteful and unusually ornate staircase, transcending the first floor and elevating dwellers to the lofty heights of his second. And then I realized the staircase! It was a handsomely attractive feature in this less detailed interior. "Why did you choose this staircase?" I queried my erstwhile colleague.
"It was all they had,"
XJ2 replied. "All they had?" I responded. "What builder only has one choice in staircases, a body badass and baroque?"
It wasn't my builder's staircase. I threw that in the rubbish the moment I found this one,"
he explained. "Found?" I was dumbfounded. "You just find these things?"
"Yeah," XJ2 told me. "It was out in the woods a few miles away, and I stumbled across it on a hike."
"You found a staircase?" I was shocked. "In the woods? And it looked like this? Weren't you suspicious?"
"Nah,"
XJ2 unabashedly related.
"I figured someone mislaid it on one of their hikes."
"Mislaid it on a hike?" I burst. "Who brings ornate and humongous stairs with them on a hike in the woods?"
Maybe they built it while camping, I don't know.
"Are you insane, man? You don't know what this is?"
"Oh, no!"
XJ2 broke down in a fit close to tears.
"You know the owner? Do I have to return it? Can't I just keep it a while longer? It completes my image, you know."
XJ2, this is an interdimensional portal to the demonic realms, I explained. People go up these things and never come down. They might even be Sasquatch portals, but no one ever verified that. Do you have any Skippy?
"Aw, man," XJ2 replied. "Can't you swat away the influences and just let me keep my staircase, man?"
"No," I told him. "But first, I never got to encounter one of these items before. They pop up all over. David Paulides wishes he could find one. And now I have one right here. I'm going in, XJ2. I want to ascend and transcend this mortal realm to see whom is truly behind this case of the specious staircases."
"Oh, not great aliens again,"
XJ2 whined. I could see the trauma of his previous encounters in ass play emerging from reddening eyes.
"Please, not them."
"Nonsense, fellow," I reassured him. "I came prepared for even them. I guarantee results if they show up." Within minutes, I had my best suit on, my prismatic goggles rigged with FLIR camera, my silver-fed Diablo on my right, my Glock under my left, and a backpack with Skippy and apples, and I was ready to roll into tricky situation indeed. No time to waste. I charged up the stairs and screamed aloud, "Tutti debi sempre trovare!" It was all I could remember of the sickly incantations. It means only in witches' company. Honestly, I thought I blew it. But it must have worked. XJ2 later said that the stairs warped at the apex when I got there, and some kind of ectoplasm was wiggling down around the rails and into the air as I disappeared. And then he waited. Meanwhile, I was not quite so bored. I was besieged by sights and sounds I never saw before. This was my first trip into the realm of wizards and wobbly little devilkins. This was their residence, and it was ugly as sin indeed. A reverse-like world of dark green skies speckled with emerald green stars, glowing neon bright. The foliage and stray artifacts were all darkish near black, with phosphorescent glows. And there I was, a big, colorful dork. My black suit turned white, my white shirt now black. It was like I was in Miami Vice or something. I was a big tourist, and obviously so. The Glocks, though, looked really cool in white, I have to tell you. That was really awesome. Anyway, I shuffled through the undergrowth, seeing pterodactyls overhead in the distance. A stray Bigfoot could be heard loping about the woods, but it could have been a gugway. And traveling lights went zipping across the blighted firmament every so often. Aggressive and grief-stricken howls were reporting from around me in the woods every so often. What a dreary-ass place, XJ7. Not at all the fun I thought it would be. I figured it would be like the Andreasen affair with those weird, stalk-eyed monkey things, clinging onto real cool future architecture as little Crowley lambs led the souls of scoffers into Elysium for their next anal probe, etc. But no, just a huge tangle of insane and unappetizing. Where were the ghosts and ghoulies? I wanted Chucky the doll to leap out and do some rap or breakdance, or something weird I could relate at cocktail parties and amaze the guests. But this? It was Florida, on any day of the week, with an inverse filter applied. D- to Satan for his inability to enthuse my design senses this time. Anyway, I just meandered about, trying to avoid the animalistic howls and groans. I only had so much ammo, and I really didn't feel like exerting myself. And then, lo, I spied with my electrified eye a heat signature of something telling. A bunch of children, small kids. They were probably no more than 9 at best, all huddled in the forest, building a staircase, and around them were various routers, saws, and scrolling machines, etc. It was impressive. I was wondering where the electricity was coming from, but the extension cords were endless from what I saw. They were beavering away, captives to a few century wraiths and chupacabra chilling out on the sidelines, while these abductee human babes were doing all the hard slog. The cheek! So this was the master plan of all those creepy cryptids? They weren't inventive enough, weren't endowed with opposable thumbs enough to make really cool woodwork on their own, from which they could craft portals of the damned to befuddle, and minds to muddle, out in the public parks and forests of North America. My blood was boiling, XJ7. I wanted to kill the undead, and without mercy I did. It was like I was possessed by this outrage. The next thing I remember was blasting hollow points into the chupacabra and opening them wide, with huge holes scattering their tainted flesh to the ground. And through the clouds of sprinkling chupa blood, I spurzed out with my Diablo and laced up the wraith, using silver bullets to disperse their forms back to perdition itself. "Children!" I exclaimed to the surprised kiddies halting their slavish task. "Form a chain! Hold hands! I'll get us out of here!" poor little guys, too stunned by all the bangs and flashes and the weariness of their own toil to do more than accept what they were told, or not even able to emote. But the staircase erupted in fire, green flames, laughter of some unseen tormentor, some happy, harpy little devil from beyond my senses, guffawing like a damned jackal. I had to find another way, perhaps the way I came. Though there was no adjoining staircase, but perhaps a portal that was visible, or a heat signature for the fleer. We ran, we scampered, and within a hilly field of lush grass I sang, "The hills are alive with the sound of music," as I led these abducted kids from the terror of their enslavement, all of us skipping along like a bunch of tards until we were exhausted. And then we sat there in a circle enjoying the Skippy and apples I had brought while I had time to reload the muzzleloader and pump silver hollow tips back into my Glock mags. Then I had a good idea indeed. Let's burn this motherfucker down to the ground, baby! As we held hands in a daisy chain and skipped along to our doom or deliverance, I scattered sprinkles of holy water from a squirt bottle I had concealed about me. The field was igniting. The woods were in complete conflagration. Even the sky was burning away as if it was a muslin backdrop. Everything was going retrograde, and the hellions of this world were screeching. The archfiend of this alternate universe was screaming at us to get out and never return. Destruction. Sometimes it is so delicious to us, is it not, XJ7? I felt I was turning tables and chewing bubble gum for a moment in that ludicrous location outside of our world. Flashes of light jabbed and pecked about us, and then we were gone from there and translated to some other hole in the universe. I blinked a few times and could make out a normal darkness about us. My clothes were black again. Everything was returned to normal, and all of us were together on a staircase. I was leading them down carefully. The place echoed, as if we were in a huge cavern. Specks of sunlight could be seen in the distance, coming through gaps in some material far away. "What the hell?" I whispered as we slowed down and stopped. Ka-chunk! Lights came on, blinding lights, spotlights of an earthly and unwieldy design, ancient and clunky, military, I deduced. I also deduced that because there were a half-dozen smartly dressed Air Force officers and MPs shifting weight about under those spotlights. Turning from the light, I could make out that the staircase we descended was XJ2's original staircase. It was now transplanted elsewhere, in a military hangar of some fashion. But I had only been in that world for a couple hours, and yet days must have passed on terra firma. "Stay where you are!" The stern and authoritative voice beckoned. "You are all under arrest by authority of the Dropkick Project of the U.S. Armed Forces." Under arrest, man? I was becoming furious. I'm a friggin' hero. I just rescued all these wonderful children from slavery at the hands of Beelzebub himself, or some of his dearest employees, I shan't wonder. The MPs raised their assault rifles to my slight approach. "Have you no heart?" I asked the head officer. "Do it. For the children." My words echoed into the cavern of that ill-begotten Quonset hut. I tried to pour on the charm, smiling, turning to the children, motioning to the cherubic entourage I'd scooped from the poop of Perdition's prison, and looked back to meet the gaze of these dozen adolescents to realize, and thus exclaim loudly, "Black-eyed kids!" My lungs bellowed in terror. These kids weren't human at all. In that inverse world, they appeared normal, like kids from the village of the damned. But out here, where everything reverted to normality, they were black-eyed kids. The demon manifestations of some of the worst and most notoriously noxious and cancerous spirits that accompany devastation and sin on a spiral to dissolution. I yanked my hand away from one BEK, holding on to me. Luckily, I had leather gloves on. Otherwise, my hand might have just turned into a carcinogenic lump and dropped off right then. I yelled out at the sight of BEK sweat all over my right hand. I lunged to the kid and wiped my sheathed hand all over his sickly and detestable white face, smearing off his filth back onto him. Take that cancer back, tool! Your face is a tumor now. He looked a little hurt at that gesture of mine. It was almost human. Yet a blink of an eye later, and they all opened their mouths to reveal pointy teeth as their faces wrinkled up like candy wrappers the morning after Halloween. That was all it took for me to start a-shootin' once more. Violence isn't the way to solve anything, but it certainly sorts out a lot of tedious homework. As my werewolf hollow points were decimating the screaming and fleeing children, the Air Force folks were equally unprepared and began letting loose rounds of 5.56 as if firecrackers on the 4th. And true to their form, the boys in blue were destroying just about everything aside from their intended targets, which was mostly me and those infernal black-eyed kids. Thus the spotlights were blown out and we were all in the dark. I ran. I didn't want anything to do with those nasty NATO bastards, or whatever they were. Who knows where the kids went? Back to hell, I hope. The military were probably still on to them, as I got further away from the squalor and meandered the myriad devices and partitions in that hangar to find an exit door. And into the sunlight I went. I was in a desert, surrounded by mountains and other hangars. Area 51? I asked Providence, and then turned to see a sign above the door. Oh, I corrected myself. Area 52. They had switched it up. We were somewhere in Utah, no doubt, or maybe northern Nevada or New Mexico. Trivia! I ran to the next hangar and ducked inside. Luckily, no one at these facilities ever goes outside, because there's always some geeky MUFON spies roaming the peaks of these valleys with exceptionally strong telephoto lenses. And they always get the best candid shots of well-decorated officers manhandling their balls or picking their noses when they think no one is about. This hangar was alight with plentiful partitions, but no signs of life. I needed to find a vehicle to stow away in, to perchance drive out of there with. I needed to commit a felony and flee for my life. I did, and I was ready to get busy breaking the law, as Judas Priest used to sing. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything but endless testing equipment and welding rigs along my meandering path, until I rounded a corner and ran smack dab into a pack of emotionless, heartless, soulless, gray aliens working on a flying saucer of some design. They turned in unison, being of one hive mind, and stared at me with those disgustingly huge black eyes. One of them, the one I was focused on, started doing that grotesque wrinkling thing they sometimes do. You know, sucking in the eye and wrinkling it up, slightly closing the lids, and then reinflating the eyes, and, ew! I let drool out of my mouth in response to that certain jackanapes. And then I came back to my senses and shouted, "What are you doing here? They might believe your vehicles are corporeal, but I know otherwise. That's like a pig frying bacon." The group slowly advanced and encircled me against a partition, three-fingered hands quivering with joy as they slowly pawed towards me. And I saw one in the back produce an anal probe. "Enough of this butt-foolery," I screamed. I skidded sideways, and then rubber-banded back to snatch one of the Greys by the neck and hold his spindly satanic construct in front of me as a hostage. "Don't move!" I barked, and produced from over my shoulder, from my backpack, a last remaining item I had with me. It was a titanic, a super-sized back massager with a pronounced tip like a can of Campbell's soup. One more step and I'll anal probe your compatriot with this thing. And then let's see you all sit down as you deal with fair play to the A. All those little slit mouths agape and squealing in abject horror. Ha ha! You had to see it, XJ7. It was hilarious. I had them. I dragged that little butt nugget up the ramp into his craft, another aspect of the hive mind, and told him to zip us to wherever USA, and pronto! And he did. We blinked out of existence in that shed and translated right into the Mall of America on a Sunday morning. Once I left his craft, the thing just boinked back to wherever it wanted. I was alone in a semi-darkened corridor of this unappetizing American edifice of excess and expense. Just me and that massager, walking along, staring in windows of shadowy shops and obfuscated goodies. What had happened to XJ2, I pondered. Later, I was to discover that he was instantly enshrouded by military forces the moment I zoomed out to the other world. They were on to me, XJ7. They had followed me, traced via the fellow that loaned me the Cirrus 22. You can't trust anyone anymore. The Pentagon put out a quick directive to seize the staircase and take it in for questioning. Yeah, the military mind at work, right? And so ended this preposterous sequence of stereotypical situations. What next, I asked myself. I would find out soon, and so will you, XJ7. So will you. Soon.
Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way in the house I can
it
say.
depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
Is it?